So, if you're anything like me, you might have been scrolling through the MCDM Discord looking for videos about running Draw Steel as director. Not videos of people running Draw Steel, or videos of people talking about the games they'd run of Draw Steel, or people talking to the creators of Draw Steel. Much as we appreciate their work, I can only listen. I listen to them and talk enough, right? I've done that. What I was looking for was like videos, particularly about a year ago, about creating adventures, right? Because there is some good advice in the book, but it's pretty vague. I was looking for anyway, really specific, like, I want to run Draw Steel tonight. Here is a thing I can do to run Draw Steel tonight. And I was looking, and I was waiting, and I've been waiting for a year now, and no one's made these videos. So I have taken up the mantle to make these videos. I was actually inspired by Matt's video from Matt's stream about a year and a half ago, where he made the adventure, and he was like, the players know more about Draw Steel than the developers. And it dawned on me that I've been running since Backer Kit 2 came out this time last year, and a year ago, so since May 2025, I have ran Draw Steel pretty much twice a week the entire time, and pretty regularly 3 times a week. I've probably run at least over 100 sessions, and I was like, wait, that probably makes me someone who's run quite a lot of Draw Steel by the average, right? So my hope is that if you are like brand new to Draw Steel or relatively new to Draw Steel, this video will be helpful for you. So the plan for this series in general is I'm going to go through the year of adventures I have run for the last year, and I'm going to talk about them. A lot of these early ones are going to be saying, this didn't work, this didn't work, this didn't work, this didn't work, and this was bad, because I'd never run the system before. I had no information to base my design off, really, other than D&D, which I have quickly learned is a bad starting point for a Draw Steel adventure. Adventures that are good in D&D are not necessarily good in Draw Steel. Today, we're going to go over the very first adventure I ran in its entirety. There's one adventure that I ran before that one, but it's a longer adventure, so I'm going chronologically through my games over the last year in order of running those adventures, and I'm going to talk about what happened. It's not... My hope is, I'm going to probably provide a link to the maps if people want that. If people watch this, I'll post the map somewhere. My hope is that after you watch this video, you should be able to run the adventure, and you should have learned how to make it better than when I ran it, right? Because this version of the adventure I'm showing is the one I ran, and it was not very good for a lot of reasons. So you're going to get to learn that, and then you can run it maybe, and it'll be better. Or you can not run it, and you can just learn and take this into your own adventure. I don't care, it's your business what you do with this video. The very first thing I did, because I'll be totally honest here, when I prepped this adventure, I watched Matt's adventure design stream, the one he did, that was what got me to run. I watched that, and I prepped an adventure alongside that, pretty much, right? So you're going to see some similarities there, because I was blatantly stealing, because I didn't know I was going to run for it. No one ever noticed, right? Only you know. So just don't tell people that I steal. When I prepped this adventure, I thought this adventure was going to be, step 1, the players get called in by the leader of the knights to go, hey, one of my knights is missing. Step 2, they were going to go to where the knight was in the town, where he'd gone to a town of Aratos. They'd spend some time in Aratos. Some weird stuff would happen with some goblins along the way, and then they'd go to the keep that he'd taken over and discover that he'd been possessed by a demon, right? Good vibes. Good adventure. Except it doesn't work in Draw Steel, and we will get to why that is not a good Draw Steel adventure. Well, it's a fine Draw Steel adventure, but it's not a good Draw Steel adventure. So, the bit that went the best, the intro scene where the players get to meet, I think that, this is my hot take, I reckon in about 10 years' time, you know how D&D, the standard at the start is, you meet in a tavern. No, the standard Draw Steel start is you meet in the adventure giver's office. That either the adventure starts with the party, who everyone already knows each other, turning up to the adventure giver's office, or it starts with the party arriving one by one to the adventure giver's office. It makes life easy because it gives the players a purpose to talk to one another, right? They're at this office where they know the adventure is going to be given, so they need to talk to the quest giver to find out about the quest. That means they need to talk in character because they need to think, what would my character ask, or just what do I need to know? And then they're going to learn about each other because they're going to learn what those people ask. In the way in D&D, being in a tavern, you learn about how the player thinks because of how they respond to the tavern. Here, you get this, but you also get you get to be a hero, right? You're immediately telling the player, your character is someone who would go to this, right? And helps, I think, the players think about it, because when you start in a tavern and you give them a quest, now the question is, will the players do the quest? But when you start with the quest giver giving the quest, the players are heroes in Draw Steel. They're going to do the quest. So just cut to the chase, man. Just send them straight in, right? Hot take. Maybe that will age like milk, but we'll see. So that scene went pretty well. I introduced an NPC, Aethelina, who will come back if I make more of these videos repeating. And then, fun fact, one of the first questions they asked, right? You'll see here, it just says Enzo Ferrario. Ferrario, I'm sorry, Italian viewers. And fun fact, when I prepped this adventure, I just never gave the knight the name before the session. When the players asked me, what is this guy's name? I had to go to fantasynamegenerator.org/Italian names and pull that name off. Again, here, I didn't actually prep what the inside looks like. I improv that. Very start I ran, I kind of asked, do you think your player would arrive early, late? Other thing, that gives the players another way to kind of share about their characters, right? And then the next moment I had prepped, right, depending on what the players wanted to do in the town, because I didn't know if they'd want to do stuff, right, is the next thing I had was I wanted the moment the players left the town and went in the wilderness to be like a moment. The idea that, like, that is going to feel that's going to be an important moment in the adventure is when they leave the town, the guards of the town are going to close the city gates behind them and lock them. And now they are in the wilderness. Now they are not protected. If something attacks them, they might not even be let back in, which I felt was quite an important thing to sell, that this is an unsafe place. But that was just basically me describing what it looks like, and the guards being like, good luck on your adventures, right? Chill scenes, right? Then I dropped them straight into something that was Draw Steel. This is the first ever montage test I ever ran. I wrote down some fun things where I kind of said that if they were fast, it would take them 2 days. If it was medium, it would take them 3 days. If it was a lose, they'd take 4 days. The thing was, I don't know how I missed this. I never prepped any consequences for that. It literally wouldn't have mattered what happened. There was no consequences. So I don't know why I prepped that at all, other than the fact that I wanted the players to do a montage test. And honestly, this is the moment I fell in love with Draw Steel. But I did the classic. I gave them the, like, stuff to look at, like the possible problems, and then they just ran with it, right? Like, they went off on their own little thing. I remember really vividly 2 of the characters, Flint and Telemachus, were like, oh, we're going to do the navigation and try and find a shortcut to get there faster. And so they did, like, one of them did the test to make the navigation, the other one helped, and they passed it, and they didn't do that great. So we had this whole thing that they were bickering, right? But it was meaningless, right? I think now, if I was running this today, I would probably say that, like, we're going to get to this, but I know that the knight has kidnapped the people, right? So I'd probably say that if this was a win, you'd get there and all the people would still be alive. But for each failure the players roll in the montage test, they don't get damaged or something. The failure, like the consequence of it, each failure, one of those people dies, which would then make the encounter I had prepped much harder. Right? So they wander along through the hills. All goes very smoothly. I knew that the knight had gone insane. He'd been possessed by a demon. It was a whole thing. And so I knew that they were following his footsteps. So when they go down the road, they find this campsite that they stayed in. And the players have a look. One of them on their watch has a look around. And I described it as they find this helmet with, words. So I prepped some encounters along the way, and this is like I do more and more as I prep more, is I started prepping, instead of prepping like, oh, they will find a campsite and they will find a helmet, I just prep, this is the information I want to give, and then I let it come out naturally. Like, if the players had been like, we want to track him, I could have given it then, but in this case, they found a campsite, and I kind of said when they camped there that they noticed that it was like a campsite before they camped there. And they find a helmet, and they're looking over the helmet, and it's definitely a helmet of the Knights of Teneral, and they have a look on the inside, and carved into the inside, and I think I described it as written in blood, is help me, help me, help me. They got the message that there was weird stuff happening. And they spent some time looking around for other weird stuff. They were like, is there a side of a fight? All of this stuff, but there wasn't anything, right? Because this is just some crazy guys writing, right? Then I had my first kind of ever encounter, and you can see this very encounter because I have way too many minions. Like, for an ambush encounter, this is not a very well set up ambush encounter, because there are no ambushers, there is no hiding, And a really important thing here that I didn't know was important at the time is I didn't have a map for this encounter. And a draw steel encounter in a flat plane with no walls or trees or height differentiation is a boring draw steel encounter. Now, I got away with this because this was the first session I'd run for this group. But most of the players, it was their first time playing draw steel. A couple of them had run, but most of them mostly only played like playtests, which are a very different experience. But I was like, oh, you need height, you need walls, you need things to be thrown into. Otherwise, the game is just different, right? And so you can see that because like the goblin spine cleaver being able to push is meaningless if they're just pushing people around. And I was pretty lucky that my players handled this pretty well, that they actually were being alert on the walk, so they saw the goblins first, so they ambushed the goblins ambushing. And then I got a rule completely wrong in the moment. I remember this because it was when I learned how surprised worked. I ran this like a surprise round in D&D where the goblins didn't get to take a turn. And I mean, they were decimated. It made that's too much power for a draw steel character. But I learned that. So this was my first time using Malice. This was my first time doing the fight. It went very smoothly. The players won. They took a goblin prisoner. And this is where I'd completely, this is a classical moment to me of, how differently some different groups can play. And I think Draw Steel emphasizes this kind of playstyle. But the players took a goblin prisoner, and they just got him to tell them where their base was. And so I had this whole part of the adventure prepped, where they would go to a Rattus, they would meet all of these NPCs I'd prepped, they would have a big tavern fight, and it was going to be a, defend the tavern encounter, but no, the players were taken straight there, which was just very different, right? And it's like, you can't predict those kind of things, you can't really prep for them, and I'm glad it happened. It made the game better, I'd argue. But this is a classic moment of I never really prepped that. I never prepped any of these goblins, and I should have prepped. Who is the captain of these group of goblins? Who's in charge? Who's the goblin the other goblins talk to? And then one other goblin, who could be any other goblin in the group. Who is this goblin underboss? That means a lot. Oh, also fun. You can see how old this is because these stat blocks say band. That's the old word for horde. These would be like horde now. Just a little fun Easter egg in there. And so that means I had to skip all of this. And so I was kind of on the fly. I came up with the idea of them bumping into two goblins on wargs riding out to hunt the players down. And they took those two goblins by surprise. They took them prisoner. I didn't even run that as an encounter because I was like, this is going to be so easy for the players in that situation. It's trivial. It's not even really worth running. And at that moment, I had an interesting experience with a player who I had an interesting experience with one of the players where they were like, oh, well, if we just if we set these goblin frees, they're going to go back and alert their masters to our presence. If we tie the goblins up, they could die to the forest, right? What are we going to do with these goblins? And so one of the players was like, let's just kill them. And I was like, no, this is a heroic game. If you want to take this goblin here, prisoner and talk to him and try and bring him a better life, you can't then just murder one of his friends. That's not how this works. If you want to do that, that's evil. That's not heroic. I'm going to dock you a hero token for each of the goblins you killed. And that player was really unhappy about that because they were like, but we just killed a bunch of goblins. Why is that different? And I was like, well, those goblins were on the road trying to kill passers-by and take caravans, right? And they were going to attack you first. But these two goblins they already surrendered. They already didn't start a fight. They're just scouts. They're just doing their job. It's not heroic to kill them. It was something that caused a lot of friction. I think I'd stand by that now. I like using hero tokens to kind of tell the player, is this something which is good? Is this something that's evil? What's the vibe here? Just a quick editing note here, because I think this is an unhelpful thing I've just said, that the DM should tell the players whether something is good or bad. Just that, if the players want to do something which is objectively evil, like murdering a surrendered target, that's bad and that's not heroic. That's what I meant there, not that you as the DM have the power to decide what is good or evil. So then the main lair, I prepped as a five room dungeon. I just watched the Mystic Arts video on 5-room dungeons. I thought it was a really good format. I still use it. It can be very, very convenient to just format out a dungeon. The only change I'd make to it now is I'd like to add some of the books. So you want to be a game master, I like to put in little little extra scenic rooms. So not every room is an encounter, because if every room is an encounter, the players know that every room is an encounter quite quickly. The very first thing I prepped was that outside, and I will show you the map now, outside of this place, I never put it on the map, that's really the issue. On one of these bridges, there's this broken down stone golem, and so I always had the idea that the players could talk to that stone golem, and it's the spirit of the keep. This is an old elven keep. Golem is magical and wants to protect the keep, and the players could have talked to it and gained information, and it could have helped them. It could have been a retainer, but the players had already by this time planned to disguise themselves as goblins. So they've got the goblin they were friends with now, and they've got the polder who had the disguise skill to disguise himself as goblins, ride the wargs into the castle to gain access to the keep. And that idea they rolled really well for it, is my recollection, so they managed to get all the way into the keep, and they completely bypassed that. But then the really interesting thing is, I prepped this adventure to have 2 goblins on each door, 4 up in the tower, and Enzo in here. And I genuinely thought at this time, and I think anyone who's run Draw Steel, you will see the comedy of this, that these were 4 different fights. Nah, any encounter. This is a singular encounter map for Draw Steel. One of the things that I learned running this adventure and the other one is Draw Steel maps need to be big in terms of the space they take up, but they need to be small. So this map is big enough in terms of space to take a fight, but it's still way too big for like a fight to take place in. Like if we look at this size 6, if you have someone fighting here and they get pushed free, all they can do is just push the creature they're pushing against the wall, not even into the wall. This size room is pretty good, right, for some pushing. You've got a lot of space. And this area here is pretty good, but this is too big. If I was to redo this now, I would probably put an extra some walls here. I might put some ruined bits of wood here to add some more movement. This room at the back is definitely too big. But the tower worked pretty well. So the player's plan was they came in. They had the shadow sneak around the side and climb up. They had gecko gloves, so they could phase through the wall. But yeah, I quickly realised, this is not 4 encounters. This is not 5 encounters. This is 1 encounter. One probably slightly nastier encounter than I should have done. So I then another thing that had happened is that, does this page still exist? No, long ago deleted. So then the next thing that happened was I had prepped this adventure under the assumption that when they were in Eratos would have been under attack and some prisoners would have been stolen. And so this guy would have been doing a ritual, but because they cut across land, they got here before he could go out and attack Eratos. Well, there would have been some bugbears there, but I removed the bugbears because that would have been very confusing to then have the bugbears wouldn't have fit in this fight, would have killed the party. So they had to go. They only had the 1 NPC to save, because I knew that guy had already been kidnapped, and they had Enzo, the human blackguard, who was the villain of the piece. They found out from the goblin he had come in, he'd taken over the goblin sect, and instead of when he'd been sent by Evelina to the town to clear up the goblins, to clear up the goblin issue, investigate this goblin issue, and when he found the goblins, he'd taken them over and kind of declared himself their king, and the goblins were like, we don't really want you to be your king, and he was like, not my problem, mate. But they kind of took charge, and he had this prisoner, and when the players break in and he discovers that, there's heroes here to stop me, he starts the ritual of sacrificing the player. And I used the most classical Draw Steel encounter I think you can, which is there are 3 rounds until this thing happens. The players need to do a thing to stop that thing happening. So in this case, it was they needed to get this guy who was currently restrained and unconscious out of this red box, right? Either over the walls or down the staircase or out of this gap in the wall. And it was a very cool fight, right? Like that we used the jumping mechanics because they had to jump in here. The rogue climbed up the tower, tried to disarm the ballista, failed and got shot off the tower and nearly died. That was pretty cool. The party was doing quite well for healing because they had a conduit, but the shadow had been pushed off the tower kind of the wrong side of it, so they couldn't be seen. And yeah, there was a big fight. That bit went very, very smoothly. The Draw Steel combats shined, even in this map, which didn't really have enough elevation and stuff. But what I learned was that, okay, this encounter doesn't sound that bad. 6 Goblin Warriors. How much EV is a Goblin Warrior these days? I don't know if it's the same as it was back then. 3 EV, so we're talking about, 18 EV of Goblin Warriors. The Blackguard is 12 EV, so 30 EV for 4 level 1 players. Pretty chill, it's a hard encounter. But then I'd put up on the tower, I had put 4 Goblin Snipers and a Ballista. Because I didn't think much of that at the time. Like, it's a Ballista. How much deal could a Ballista be? But I'm going to tell you now, if you want to make your players sad, put a Ballista and put minions around it. Because what this actually means is the minions can shoot twice per turn. On their turn, they shoot this Ballista, which is a very powerful attack, twice, and it's up in a tower. So it had an edge on any of the players, and its range is big enough that it could hit anyone in the entire castle. And so the players are trying to take over this castle while there's this Ballista raining down on them, and that was very, very fun because it gave the players kind of 2 problems, right? And this is a thing that this is the main lesson I learned in this. Probably should have been earlier than 20 minutes into this video. But the big thing I learned from this is having one encounter objective is good, but having an encounter objective and a second thing that's basically anti that encounter objective, like go and rescue the townsfolk, oh, but there's also this giant ballista. It's very fun, and it meant they didn't deal with the giant ballista, and they took a lot of damage from this ballista just pummeling them down. I mean, the shadow nearly died trying to disarm it. If they'd not rolled a tier 1, I think that would have gone better. But that was all an experience. And then, obviously, because they hadn't found the golem, they couldn't do this, but a player kind of went searching, and I had them find an old elven map, and some Snapdragon seeds that some Snapdragon and the players have never used as far as I know. And that was the setup for the next adventure, was the map. There were some other things they could do, but they rescued the townsfolk. They didn't have to take it back to the town, but that was kind of post the adventure, dealing with it. But that's the very first adventure I ever ran for Draw Steel. Hello, Editor Me back just at the end here. I'm going to do a better outro than Recording Me did. So thank you very much for watching. If you got this far, thanks a lot. This is like the first video I've tried to do in this kind of style. It's just something I'm trying out. Yeah, comment. Last time we did a fish, I said this. So comment a little monkey if you've actually watched this far. Let me know what you thought. Let me know if you like the style, right? Because I think, as I was watching it back, I was thinking about the fact that I could have taken the things that I realised when I reread my notes and turned those into videos where I go, hey, you can do this thing in Draw Steel. Maybe I should do that. Would that be more useful than this? I feel like seeing the whole adventure could be useful in that context, but maybe this is more useful. So yeah, let me know. I hope you liked watching. Hopefully if I've set this up right, you'll be seeing a link to some other video, if there's videos in the future. And yeah, like and subscribe and all the things. Have a really good one.